What's up, y'all? Freddy Fears here. Sorry it took me so long for this video, but just getting off work, as you can see. Um, so today I am going to show you guys how to cut the bottom out of your Glowforge. I know this is something that everybody wants to do, but is super afraid to do. It is a huge risk. It was the scariest risk, but you know, if you're afraid to take risks, how can you ever get rich? That's my motto. So unfortunately I did not take any videos while actually cutting it because I was too afraid to have any hands free. So as somebody else was cutting it while I was holding the Glowforge with dear life, because I was that afraid. But everything went well, and also that I could finish one project for somebody on a bottle that I had promised them I could do. Didn't realize it until I got the bottle in hand. They had already bought the bottle. They wanted to gift to somebody else, and I didn't realize how big the bottle was until I had it in hand, which was only a few days before they needed to present the gift. So I was in a crunch, and I was gonna go buy some power tools, but I have a handy neighbor across the street who helped me out, and he had a jigsaw, and that's pretty much all you needed. We used a marker just to outline where we wanted to cut. I am going to cut the piece that I cut out. I'm going to cut that with the jigsaw just so you can see what you would have to go through. As far as it is going to be, it's kind of dangerous. I do recommend having at least one other person to help you with it, because let me just go get it. This is the piece here that was cut out. Not so pretty up close. I know it probably looks great on the pictures and the videos that you may have seen already, but up close, it's not as pretty as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to have smooth edges. I wanted it to be a piece I could just actually put back into the Glowforge if I really wanted to, but that's not the case. And that's because we came across, I guess, some difficulty just learning how the jigsaw was going to cut through this material. So it is like a really hard plastic. I'm not sure how to describe this, but it's not pretty at all. You can see how jagged these edges are, but I am going to take the jigsaw through this so that you can see how difficult it is to cut through all of these intricate pieces here. These make it very difficult to cut because at first, you know, you're applying a certain amount of pressure in order to get through this thin piece in these sections, so you don't have to apply as much pressure as you would to get through the thicker sections. So for instance, cutting through here, the jigsaw you would cut quickly, then you'll come here, you have to apply more pressure. And then once you apply more pressure and it gets through this piece, then it kind of jolts over here. And then it gets hard again, and then you have to take off a little bit of pressure and apply a little bit of pressure. So you have to be very careful to go through these pieces. It's helpful to actually angle the jigsaw so that it cuts this piece before you get to it. And that just allows you to kind of lead into it a little bit slower. But with the jigsaw, like I say, once it hits these points, if you're not careful and you're not holding it very firmly, it's going to kind of throw the machine around a little bit. So that's what I was trying to describe to some people in the comments of the Facebook post I made in the Glowforge World group. But it's going to be much easier to understand once I actually do it and show you. So I'm going to go ahead and sacrifice this piece. I'm going to cut it for you guys just so you can understand exactly what I mean. This piece here is just a rubber piece that is it has adhesive down here, as you can see. So when the Glowforge was still whole, I took the edge of this rubber piece and just pulled it off. I kept it in a place off to the side so that it wouldn't get dirty or dusty on the adhesive, so that I could put it back on the Glowforge. So the longer pieces are still on the bottom of the Glowforge. I did cut those pieces off and put them back on so that you can still have that grip on the bottom. So I'll show you guys that as well once I take you over to the Glowforge. So I'm going to go through all the comments that was left on the Facebook page, answer as many questions as I can and as we're presented. So if you see this video and you commented, leave a comment under the video to just say, you know, thumbs up, just so I know that you guys actually paid attention to it. But otherwise, you guys enjoy. Happy Glowforging. All right, guys, so here I have the Glowforge. Of course, if this needs to be said, you want to unplug unplug all electricity and also your air hose. And this is the Glowforge Pro in its rare form. So a few people asked why not turn the Glowforge upside down. I don't recommend that because, of course, this is all glass. The last thing you want to do is risk cracking this and having to replace that. I wouldn't even want to scratch it, or especially damaging your lens, your camera lens up here. So I don't recommend doing that. I do recommend using a towel, or if you have any foam or some type of cushion that you can actually wrap around the back of this tube here. Of course, because you're going to lay this on the back side. I'll show you that in a second. But once you pick it up, if you don't have this fully secured to the back, the last thing you want to do is it slamming as soon as you put it back there. And I actually made that mistake of not realizing that I needed the cushion back there first, and I heard it slam. Nothing happened to it, thankfully. So what I would do is, you could either fold it so you have more cushion to put it here. I would actually recommend having it a little more open, like so. That's about the width of the opening. And then you could have this down this way. You could also take this piece out just so it's not in the way, but I didn't want to risk disconnecting this and something more happening, so I left it in for me. I just made sure that it was out of the way depending on which side we were working on at the time. So I would do that for two reasons. For one, when you're cutting all the debris and the shedding and stuff, the shredding, it falls back because you have the Glowforge up on its side. So having this towel here will kind of catch some of that stuff, preventing you from having to find it and suck it all out or brush it all out. But a vacuum was very handy, especially if you have one with the tube that can kind of get into these spaces. It's going to get over these walls. The debris is going to fly over there just because you have a lot of air and debris flying around. So I would be very careful of that, or take you some more towels, stuff you some towels in here, and maybe even just tape this area off with maybe some paper or something. That way when you're working in here, the debris doesn't fly over. One thing I did notice is that small particles and debris would actually get caught up in this track here. And as this was rolling forward, I could hear it kind of bumping a little bit, just a hair. But I didn't like the way it sounded, so I just made sure I fully cleaned it and inspected every tooth here, and also under each roller. So that's just something I recommend. It's also good to cover it here so all the debris doesn't fly. I did have to get a lot of debris out from under these bands here, so something to think about. All right, so let's begin. So on the tutorial for in the Glowforge community page, there's a guy who actually did this first, and he cuts this particular shape here in order to keep the ability to put the silver plate back in. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So of course, you've noticed this tray every time you take out your crumb tray. So this sits at the bottom. When you're getting ready to do this, the very first step is taking this out. So there are 5 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that will be in the bottom. So you'll actually have to flip it up, and I'll put them in so you guys can see. Okay, so before we turn it over, what I would also recommend is when you close this, when you close your top, I actually put some tape down, because when you have it up on its side, it kind of tends to kind of hang open a little bit by itself. It won't open all the way. It is stiff enough to stop itself, but I was just a little bit more worried of it, I don't know, swinging open or hitting something, getting snagged on something. Didn't want to damage anything, of course. So this is where I started here. So as you can see, the plate is in. So slowly, or most importantly with help, you lift this up on its back side. I was very careful to make sure that once I stood it up, that everything was stable. It wasn't going to fall off of the table that I had it on and everything like that. If you can see here, this is what I mean by it kind of hangs open by itself. So that's not something that you want to swing open at the last minute or unexpectedly. So that's why I recommend maybe taping, just taping it down if you can. So at this point, just imagine that the bottom is in. So this is how it looked originally. It's actually a pretty tight fit, so it doesn't just go in very easily because of how messed up all the edges got. But anyway, so I started out, the metal plate has 5 screws. So it has 1, there's a hole here, 2, there's a hole here, 3, another one here, 4, and then there's one in the center here, 5. So you want to start by taking those off, and this is where your help or your second person comes in handy, because while I'm taking the screws out, someone else could be holding excuse me, holding the Glowforge in place and also holding the metal plate so that it doesn't just fall and hit the other components. But as you guys now know, I am a little bit more risky, so I don't have any help at the moment. You can also start by go ahead and peeling this off. All I did was just get up under this lip on the side. I think I actually used a screwdriver at the time. So I use my trusty Gerber here. And it's not to damage it, you just want to take your time to actually get this piece up. Just enough to get up under there, and then you can peel it off from there. Like I said, there is adhesive under there, but it's not a lot of sticking to. It's just these small brackets here. So you can peel that all the way off this front piece here. You're never going to touch the back piece. So once you do that, take out all the screws. Now the screws are, they have like a star shape to them. So I'm not sure, especially some of my ladies out there may not be as familiar with the tools, but there's a screwdriver. In my case, I have a bit that has this star shape to it, and it's pretty small, but you definitely need one of those in order to get it out. So it's not going to be just a Phillips head or a flathead screwdriver. You will need that star shape. So I already have these 2 out. Of course, I have the middle one out. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this door just to give myself more access to hold the silver plate. And then I'm going to just take these screws all the way out. Holding both sides and being very careful to just take it out. All right. So now, if you can imagine, this piece is still in. I haven't cut it yet. I just took out the metal plate. So now from here, I lay the Glowforge back down, closing up all the components so that nothing gets damaged while moving it. And then my next step was to actually draw the shapes that I wanted. So it was important to show you the metal piece. It's not going to go back in, so not even going to waste my time. But it was important to show you the metal pieces and where the screws fit, so that you can understand why it was cut this way. Now, you may not want to keep your screws. You may want to get more space than this, and that's completely fine. It was my personal decision that I wanted to be able to put the metal plate back in and possibly screw it in if I needed to. So the screws are here. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. The 5th one was in the center, if you remember. So I drew almost a square, but I just kept this 45-degree right up under, about a half an inch away from each hole. So a half an inch in, half an inch in. And you can do the dimensions as you please. That's just what I chose to do. And then I went about 1.5 inches out, same on each corner. So your measurements are also important. I made sure I measured. If it was 1.5 inches here, I did the same thing, 1.5 inches here. I drew this shape very carefully. I also took those same dimensions and drew it on the back. Now it's much harder because all you would see is just a line, one line here, one line there. You can also draw like in here, but it's just a little bit harder to get in there with a marker or a Sharpie. So I drew it on the front piece because my neighbor believed that it would be easier to cut from the top through the bottom, from the top down. I like the idea, but with the machine won't be able to get in all these corners because the machines are bulky. So the jigsaw, of course, it lays flat and it has a saw that goes down. It's not going to be able to go all the way to this side and also make a turn and do those things, or maybe come on this side. So it wasn't enough space. So he was able to do this side here, and then the rest we had to do from the bottom. So it was kind of pointless. I would say if anything, you might as well just start from the bottom. But because of that, drawing those lines is more difficult. You can see here, I drew those same outlines so that we could stick with that same shape if we were going from the bottom. Of course, you won't be able to see the lines we drew on the inside from the bottom, so you have to do it. And I did it as good as I could. Of course, it's more difficult with all these brackets, but we made it work. Also, this became an issue with the flat part of the jigsaw because he wasn't able to go over this. There would be a gap between the flat piece and the jigsaw as he moved. So we had to improvise. So you see the line is here. We had to go about 1/2 inch in, which was no problem. It just, the flat part of the jigsaw just set flat here and we went across. So the very first thing you have to do before you start jigsawing is drilling your holes. So depending on the size of your jigsaw, you would drill holes in each corner. So drill a hole here, drill a hole there, drill a hole here. And that's because your jigsaw needs to be able to get in there in order to start cutting. The tip of the jigsaw is not sharp. It's not going to be able to cut through something just by jabbing at it. So you need to drill those holes in order for that to happen. And I took a picture of where we cut the holes. I'll show the picture here. So you can see here, there was a hole drilled here, there, and basically at each corner. So that way, all we had to do was stick the jigsaw in and begin to cut this way. Stick it in and cut this way, and then cut up, and cut that way. So on and so forth until we had the completed shape. So this was very difficult. Like I said, I was holding this with dear life while he was cutting, but things went pretty good. And I'll show you how the machine actually cut through the material now. Kind of like melts it on there. It's kind of weird. Yeah. All right, guys, so just to wrap this up here, as you can see, the jigsaw actually melted some of that plastic, so that's why the piece that I cut out doesn't go in perfectly. Not an extreme melt, so where it's gonna damage your Glowforge. It's just minor kind of debris that hangs off on the side. It's not something I worry about in the Glowforge. It's only something I see on the extra piece itself. So, you know, you guys be careful. Take your time. It's nothing that you should rush through. Have help if you can. If not, then just find something that I guess will hold your Glowforge steady, where it doesn't take away from your safety as well. Of course, you're using power tools. Anything that could damage the Glowforge can also damage you. The steps that you want to go into, you saw me lift up the Glowforge. I took off the rubber strip off the bottom. I loosened those screws for the bottom metal plate. And then you want to draw your outline of the shape that you want. You can do the shape as big as you want. You can do it as small as you want. It's completely up to you of the shape that you want to cut out. Like I said, I did not do that because I did the particular shape that I chose because I wanted to be able to screw that metal plate back in if I wanted to. So it just gives me that option. You could also see that I was able to put the plate back in and put the crumb tray back in. So everything else with the Glowforge works spectacular. Nothing is has changed. I mean, it's like I never took the bottom out at all. So now I'm going to answer some of the questions that I saw on Facebook under the comments. Was there any venting issues? I haven't cut anything enormous or like a big wood project with the bottom out. So I can't say that I've had any venting issues. I don't think it would be, because with the bottom out, you actually get more air intake. So it seems like it should actually be better. But like I said, I've only done a bigger bottle so far, so nothing that's actually burned yet. But so I can't fully answer that question. But from my understanding, I believe that you should actually have better ventilation, because of course a bigger hole, better air intake. Can you use a Dremel with a blade? And I'm not very experienced with power tools, but I don't believe a Dremel would be good, because for one, it's a little bit smaller, and I think it's going to kick around a little bit more. It's kind of jolts you around, and I just don't think that'll be good for the Glowforge. But that's just my personal opinion. Like I said, I'm not very experienced with all power tools, so at your own risk. Can you only do bigger items if you cut the Glowforge bottom out? Yes. You can look up many forums, and Glowforgers will tell you that, you know, that's kind of one of the disadvantages to having a Glowforge, because you can only do things within that limited amount of space, and not even just within that limited amount of space, but it has to be a certain distance from the from the laser. So when you actually go into the Glowforge app, before you hit print, you want to always set focus. There will be 3 little dots at the top right hand side, and you'll hit set focus, and you set focus on wherever you want to actually print on the material you're printing on. So when you set focus, the laser automatically calibrates to the distance that it needs to cut on. That way you don't have to put in the exact thickness of your material and so on and so forth. But with that being said, if you're too far from the laser, if you have a crumb tray out, if you're too far down, it's going to tell you that it's not going to print. And if you're too close to the laser itself, then it's also going to tell you you're too close. So it's going to say, hey, your thickness needs to be within these certain measurements. So like I had a question, could the Glowforge cut its own bottom out? You know, that's something you would have to test. It's kind of late for me to try that, but I'm not sure what settings you would be able to use, because as I said, if you're too far away from the laser, it's not going to cut. It's not going to allow you to even hit print. As soon as you hit the print button, it's going to just pop up and say print stopped. But you may be able to trick it somehow. You probably have to put it on a very slow speed with a very high power setting, because like I said, that plastic was very thick, and then with the changes in the thickness of the plastic, and I can't recommend that. Hey, you should try that. That's a at your own risk thing. But maybe I'll try that for you guys by putting the I'll put in the piece that I cut out and see what I can do. So maybe that'll be my next video. I'll test that out for you guys and see, at least with it being closer up, what settings it would take to actually cut through that material. So I'll try that out for you and see where we go. What settings did I use? So I used, I believe it was 850 speed, 100 and 340 LPI for the glass engrave that I did on that bottle. I'll also include that video. But somebody else who's had more experience left a comment that they use 600 speed, 100 power, and 340 LPI, and theirs actually looked pretty good. And they also used, gave a tip that you should put in some white acrylic paint, just kind of rub it into the engrave, and it looked really, really good. As you can see in the video that I'll include here, the engrave that I did was more, it kind of looked a little more clear.
Wipe it down, 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 wipe.
Even though the bottom is out, it just allows me to cut bigger items. So the item is big, but it's still inside the Glowforge. The bottom half of the item is just out of the Glowforge. So I have to still have it within that distance in order to set the focus and for the laser to read. So I'm not sure how far the laser will actually go down without the bottom in there. And then at the same time, they also ask, you know, how big can your items be? Well, as long as I can stack up the Glowforge higher and higher, it'll allow me to have as much space in it as possible. My next project is actually going to be to cut a hole into a desk or something that I'll be able to raise it up or lower it, depending on what item I'm cutting. A lot of people ask about tumblers. I haven't actually tested anything on tumblers, but you know, I'm sure that you will be able to do it depending on the hole size that you cut in your Glowforge. Tumblers haven't really been my thing. I just think it's a personal opinion, but I think it's a saturated market. It's just, you see a lot of different things. You got people lasering tumblers, you have people epoxying tumblers and doing different things like that. So I'm sure it's a great market to be in. It's just not something I'm personally interested in, or haven't had any ideas for it just yet. So maybe I'll get into it later on, but haven't tried it yet. Can this work on any model? As far as I know, it should be able to work on any model. I don't believe that the body is made much differently. The only real differences are the power of the lasers and the pass-through features. But I believe the body or the shell of the Glowforge should be the same pretty much all around. I only have the Pro model. I don't have all the models, so I can't say what the differences may be specifically. But you know, test away. I also was asked, were there any like wires or anything that ran through that material? No, there's just a plastic, and there's just a plastic bottom and the rubber strip on the bottom that helps you with the grip. So that's all I found. I had a lot of questions about why did I choose that shape. Again, the 4 screws were where you see I had the 45-degree angles. There were screws there for me to put that metal plate back in, so that's why I chose that particular shape. And it's also what I found on the Glowforge community forum. If you just type in cutting out bottom, you'll actually find about I found at least 2 different forums about it, but the second one references the first one. Why do I put the masking tape on the glass? I was more worried about when I hit set focus, I wasn't sure if it would read incorrectly because the glass was clear. So just to be on the safe side, I put masking tape on it so that it would read correctly of the actual distance from the laser. Again, haven't had any fumes yet, but I haven't done any big projects where I would need it to be open for that. So that's something I'll test out later, and we'll see how it goes. So if you guys have any questions, leave your comments, let me know, and thank you guys for watching. You got it. You know what I mean. Happy engraving. Go forward, Glowforge.